This week, we're going to talk about OnePlus inadvertently leaving a backdoor, data breaches, people who don't trust consumers who breach, or people who breach data, the critical web security feature a lot of people just aren't using, letting Amazon into your house, and more. And Jason Wood is going to join us to talk about hackers not on, but near a plane. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News.
Most of the organizations I work with, they have
released. Yes, you read it.
Actually do.
The original Linux kernel secure Linux kit.
So I hope everybody has their resistance built up.
Brought to you by. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/hacknaked and use the code HN30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested these public assets? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
And this is Hack Naked News. I always have to make sure I get that in the right order. November 15th, 2017. It's being produced out of G-Unit Studios. This is Michael Santarcangelo, and I'm coming to you from my beach studio. Well, I mean, I kind of maybe could walk to the beach from here, but it's a little bit warmer. I had a great week last week up in Rhode Island. I hope you got a chance to check out some of those shows. I can tell you, I can't wait to get back to the studio. But you're here today for some news, and we've got some stories. You know, one of the things I've loved about this format and this program too is it gives us that chance to talk about them right naked. Like we're going to strip them down to what they are. I got some thoughts on this one, but first, tomorrow, so November 16th, 3 to 4 p.m., there's going to be a webinar with Onapsis and Paul, the Onapsis research team that uncovered 4 vulnerabilities in SAP and 15 in Oracle business applications. And if I'm remembering correctly from last week, that's just in the last month alone. So you get to join Paul and Sebastian Bortnick, the head of Onapsis Research Labs, and they're going to talk about the technical details as well as the risk to your organization. You still have time to sign up. The webcast is tomorrow. It's going to be Thursday, November 16th. Go to securityweekly.com/Onapsis. You can register today. You know, one of the reasons to do that, too, is not just the technical details. It's to think about some of those things and give yourself a better way to be a partner to the business. I think it's a real opportunity. All right, here's the news for the day. OnePlus inadvertently left a backdoor on its phones. So it's a popular Android phone, and they're up to I think they're up to now the OnePlus 5. Turns out over the last couple of years, they've accidentally left in something that's called engineer mode, which basically means anybody with physical access to your phone can root your phone. That's actually the key to this, though. It requires physical access. That means that somebody has to see that you're using a OnePlus and has physical access to it. The downside is if somebody's targeting you, they're able to do that. They don't have to load the bootloader. They can get right past it, and they could then install tracking code or other types of things on your phone. But as we've started to see more and more, the headlines blow it up as, oh, this is the most horrible thing ever. People love the phones. They're going to keep using the phones. OnePlus did issue a pretty good statement explaining the reality of this risk, and then said, by the way, probably shouldn't be there. We're going to go ahead and remove it via over-the-air update. Look for that coming soon. Retail chain Forever 21. Got to be fair. I don't shop here. But they're the next one warning about a data breach. I feel like that's the kind of place that have skinny jeans. So, you know, I'm totally not shopping there. They're looking at the card transactions from March until last month. Now, here's the thing, and I think this is interesting because we see this pretty commonly. They got the report from a third party. Somebody else came to them and said, looks like some of your payment card systems have been breached. And then when they looked at it deeper, and they're still in that process of investigation, I know it's frustrating to a lot of people, but these things do take time. What they have figured out so far is it seems to be limited to a number of terminals where the encryption wasn't working. I do hope we get more details because I think that that's interesting, and we'll see where that goes. If you happen to shop there, though, do check your credit card statements. Now, this is one of those stories that I always kind of find fascinating, and I'm going to issue it. You can tell already I've changed my tone of voice. Use this one carefully, but there is a bright spot in it. Here's the headline: consumers don't trust businesses can protect their data. Right. Well, have you looked at the headlines? I mean, gosh, even the ones we're covering, of course they don't. Of course, we don't think they can protect our data. If you go back into the early mid 2000s, this was actually a big concern. And in fact, if you go back to the late 90s, this was a big concern around online shopping. And it's what pushed us to reducing credit card liability. It used to be $200, then it was $50. Now it's $0. It's all those types of things. So not surprising when we ask people about this, they say, oh, no, I don't trust them. Yet we're watching online shopping take off. In fact, it's getting easier and easier. But here's something I think is kind of interesting. And so be careful with this. And this is a quote: companies failing to handle their customers' data responsibly may find 87% of their customers will take their business elsewhere, according to a PwC survey. It's total crap. Doesn't happen. We keep seeing that, by the way. I mean, think about it. There's a big breach. There's somebody sticking a camera in your face or a microphone, or they're asking for your opinion, and they say, XYZ company has failed you, and they breached your data. Will you ever shop there again? No, not me. Totally not shopping there. But when we go look at the payment card data itself, and we look at in-store sales, and we look at patterns, none of this holds up. This could be either confirmation bias on the part of us asking these surveys because we want to feel better about it, or just people maybe in the moment say, oh, never go there again. Wait, I need diapers. Let's run to the store. But this is something I thought was kind of interesting. These two things, financial firms face a 3% increase in customer churn if they fail to explain to customers why the incident or breach happened in the first place. Oh, that's interesting. Now, you might look at that and say 3%, that's not a lot. Oh, for some of these organizations, that's huge. That's big dollars. They can tell you exactly how much each of the churn costs them. But what I thought was more interesting was to explain to customers why the incident or breach happened in the first place. See, it doesn't mean you have to lay blame at somebody's feet. It just means we want to know. We want to get a sense of what did or didn't happen. For me, that's the real takeaway. I'd be real careful suggesting that if this happens to us, there was a time I posited that if you look at the higher end stores, like a Neiman Marcus, for example, that people shopping at Neiman Marcus have a lot of different options and they'll go different places. Didn't bear out that way either. So maybe one day it will, or maybe we're starting to realize breaches are just symptoms. Now, we just got done saying people don't think that the companies can protect our data properly. And yet, most people aren't using this critical web security feature. And what feature is that? Two-factor authentication, or what we more commonly now call multi-factor authentication, or MFA. Duo Security did a survey recently, and it turned out only 28% of people are using two-factor authentication. And this stat was a little surprising. 56% hadn't even heard of it. Now, I say it's surprising. We're coming up on a holiday here in the U.S. Probably interesting dinner conversation. How many of you are using two-factor? If you happen to ask, do a count and let me know how many are using it. And let me know how many don't even know what you're talking about. Now, what was interesting, and I'll quote this out of the article, one source of the problem may be the jargon, 2FA, two-factor authentication. It's used to describe a simple security concept, the requirement for an extra step, such as a text message code, when someone tries to log in from an unfamiliar device. And it posited that maybe the companies aren't doing enough to help people take advantage of it. Lots of thoughts on this one. Definitely the jargon piece is in there, but we're also trying to create extra steps. I think if people understood when and why we're doing that, and we made it easier for them, that might be a little bit of a different thing. I'd be curious what you think on that. But with that said, and we're talking about these extra steps, Amazon's got an interesting new program. They call it Amazon Key. Here's the idea. You give them money. I think it was $250. They give you a Bluetooth lock and a cloud camera. And then they can have certain authorized providers go up to your door with the delivery, and it unlocks the door. They can go in. They can put the delivery inside. And when they do, the camera comes on, they've recorded the whole thing, and you're good to go. Really? I like Amazon a lot. I shop from them all the time. I'm good getting the package at the door. This for me, I'm not comfortable with it. But hold on. So would you give Amazon access to unlock your house? Would you give them access? Would you let them put a camera there? Now they're telling me, or they're telling us, that the camera is only turned on when somebody comes to the door. Okay, is that the case? There was a case last year where the police thought, or maybe Alexa actually witnessed a murder, and the police wanted the evidence from that, and Amazon fought it. So we can expect Amazon's going to work aggressively to defend privacy rights, but still giving somebody else a camera in your house, it just seems interesting to me when I think about some of those things. And as this article points out, and I think it's an interesting read, there's a lot of legal issues too, in terms of what Amazon can do, what you can do, why you would or wouldn't do this. I thought it was interesting because one of the people they interviewed made a comment about Touch ID and now the new facial recognition in the iPhone 10. And I'll be fair, I made a comment this weekend. It took me a long time to get comfortable with Touch ID, and now I absolutely love it. So either I've assimilated, or maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. But now that we've gone into the physical world, ADT just purchased Data Shield. And this, I think, is fascinating. And to me, there's two links to this particular one. Their target right now is large companies and mid-sized companies. So they're not even going after the small businesses yet. These are people that might have been using ADT right now to protect their doors and their windows. It's the physical side of stuff. But they brought up the MDR, the Managed Detection and Response of Data Shield, and they're now offering that. I think it's fascinating because initially it's a one-stop shop. Love them or hate them. If you're already working with ADT, you trust them, you like the service that you're getting from them, this seems like a logical add-on. And I think you're going to start to see this also go the other direction. But what's also curious to me is, does this mean now we can start to connect some of those dots? I mean, this is where I think we've got a lot of opportunities. If I start to have sensors and they direct different cameras and then they direct different files or logging or things that we look at, I mean, wow. The way to start to correlate this, it gets a little exciting, maybe a little freaky at times too. But I think this is just the beginning. And ADT's already signaled more acquisitions are on the way. So we're going to start to see. We've talked about convergence now for the better part of a decade, and I think we're going to start seeing it happen in the commercial sector. I'm, for one, kind of excited. Now, the SEC came out and they said companies can expect new guidelines on reporting cybersecurity breaches. I threw two articles in on this one, too, because cybersecurity, and this is no surprise to anybody, is one of their top 3 initiatives. Now, what happens is they're not just saying we're worried about what individual investors do. They're looking at market manipulation. And not just can you get in and change the stocks of the stock exchanges, but are you filing false reports? Are you modifying those reports? Are people trying to get access to confidential reports? But then what they also said is public companies will, quote, soon face new guidelines for how they report cybersecurity breaches to investors. Now, I've already said today, breaches are symptoms. So on one hand, I look at it and say, well, if I'm an investor, it might be interesting to know. On the other hand, I don't need to know about every breach, right? We have complete breach fatigue. People don't necessarily pay attention as it is. But then in this article that I linked to, what's interesting is, and I got the sense this was the reporter and other people in the industry positing where we might see the SEC go. They said it might help them figure out when and what a company actually needs to disclose and give them some encouragement to take a look at investor trading, which after the Equifax incidents of recent, that was looked into, and those folks were cleared. So I think that's kind of interesting. Keep in mind, it's guidelines, not regulation, but the SEC has the power to bring an enforcement action. So it can't be ignored either. I'm going to be curious to see where it goes. Sometimes these things are great. Sometimes they have I haven't seen way too much teeth. I'm kidding if I say that. But it'll be curious to see where it goes. And lastly, as we talk about all this need for more people, more IT professionals returning to cybersecurity roles. I don't think that comes as a shock, but here's what I think is interesting. 6 million tech jobs listed in the United States alone, 2 million of them are in cybersecurity. I have to admit, that surprised me, especially 21 years ago when I got into this. I was told I was pigeonholing myself into a dead-end career and I should focus on networking instead. Yeah. 8 out of 10 of those tech professionals are mostly satisfied, but 51% are interested in working on or with cybersecurity issues. Here's why I think that matters. We keep saying we don't have enough people. We keep saying we can't hire enough people. Have you looked at the folks around you? Have you looked at your help desk? Have you looked at the other people in your organization doing IT, either to recruit and bring them into your security group, or maybe flat out to just let them take on some of the roles and responsibilities? Take the stuff that you can commoditize, push it to the edges, let them take control over it, and go focus on the things you want to focus on. Maybe you could do some of both. I think lots of opportunities there. So we covered a lot of ground this week. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Jason Wood's going to talk to us about the DHS and hackers near a plane. Some interesting things there. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. Talk more about this.
Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin.
Now, you've heard us talk about this before, but I want you to go to itpro.tv. /hack naked. You can use the code HN30. It gets you free 7 days, and then you get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. If you haven't gone, I think you're going to be surprised at how affordable this is. And if you're part of a team, they have a team solution. And I really think it's worth taking a look at. They've got a supervisor portal. We've interviewed them on Startup Security Weekly. We've talked to them a bunch of times. And one of the things that I'm taken with is the way that they've looked at what we need to be effective in security today. They grew out of certifications, so they still have that as well. But they've been bringing in experts to talk about different aspects. If you want to stay on top of the game and you want to understand some of these things, at least to be conversant in it, I think it's a fantastic way to be able to do it. I hope you get a chance to check it out. And, of course, let them know that we sent you. But I am excited again. You know, I've known Jason Wood for a long time. And only like 2 weeks ago, I was like, wow, so it's been a decade, brother. How are you? And now here we are. This is going to be a regular thing for us, I hope. He's here with our expert commentary. So, Jason, what do you have planned for us today, man?
Hey, so hey, good to be back again with you again. And yeah, this was an interesting article to me. Articles, rather. There are a couple of different articles in the show note to go check out. But basically, it's something that falls under the holy cow. Somebody actually allowed that to happen. And basically what occurred is the main article is in Avionics Today from November 8th. Of this year, 2017, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security decided to run an assessment against a Boeing 757 that they owned. Now, this was an older Boeing 757. So this isn't, one of the later released versions, but they pulled it up to a location. A group of, as they call it, government, industry, and academic professionals or officials, rather, sat down to attack this plane while it sat out on the tarmac. And they weren't in the plane. They weren't hooked up to the plane. They didn't have any insiders installing software for them or taking some kind of action to weaken the security of the plane. What was the end result? Basically, they got, within 2 days, they had established a physical or a remote presence on the internal systems of the airplane using RF communication. So I kind of wondered if, maybe Chris Roberts' posts about using the wireless networks to try and gain access to cockpit systems in the past prompted this assessment. But regardless, whatever it was, Department of Homeland Security decided to try it out, which surprises me a little bit because this is something that, a little bit of egg on some folks' face. Plus, I would think it's a little expensive to fly an airplane in that we could be using for stuff, park it, turn on the systems, and let some people hack away at this thing remotely.
Can you imagine the first time they went? I'm sorry, what are you guys asking for again? I want you to fly an airplane. I'm going to bring a bunch of people together. I want you to let us have it for a couple of days. We're going to see if we can break it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I can't imagine that was an easy sell. Sounds like a great plan. Go ahead.
And not just an airplane, it's an airliner, right? They're not pulling in a little Gulfstream or something like that here. No, we're going to take something that United, Delta, everybody's using. So let's see what we can do. So, according to Dr. Robert Hickey, a aviation program manager within the Cybersecurity Division of the DHS Science and Technology Directorate, that's a mouthful, they received the aircraft on September 19th, 2016. So this is a year ago. And within 2 days had compromised the plane via a previously known RF vulnerability. They didn't, like we've been saying, this isn't a lab environment. They didn't have an initial foothold. What they said is, he went on to say, which means I didn't have anybody touching the airplane. I didn't have an insider threat. I stood off from a distance using typical stuff that could get through security, and we were able to establish a presence on the aircraft. Now, apparently, this event and result was a little bit shocking to the pilots of these planes who, when they were told of this during a technical
can
briefing,
you imagine?
Yeah, I think that the statement in there was they all 7 of the pilots broke their jaws as they collided with the table when they were told of this. Yeah, to them, hey, the security around this stuff and how this works, I think they said, this is the Bible to us. This has to be rock solid. And they couldn't believe that somebody was able to pull this off. However, somebody, I mentioned this was, some kind of previously known vulnerability in RF communication. So some individuals in the aviation world knew about it, but not the guys and gals who were operating the planes. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at this, for us, there's not much more that we can use to evaluate the details of this report, because obviously it's classified. They don't want that word on how that happened getting out publicly. So this is all we've got. Now, some things to keep in mind before everybody starts panicking. This is a old Boeing 757. It was one of the early builds, which was in the early 80s. 83, I think, is when they came into production. Planes change over the years.
I mean, yeah, but hold on, though, because I thought about this, because I read that in your piece when I was looking at this, and I went, okay, first of all, really glad that you put that there. But then one of the things, if you look at the economics of airframes, as long as they're properly maintained, yeah, 20, 30, 40 years, not even surprising. And if you then, a lot of, even the 75s, like 752s and stuff, when they dish those off, they might only sell them for a couple $1 million, retrofit them, and then they become, commercial jets, private jets for other people.
Right. And this plane,
did you get any sense? Yeah. So did you get any sense of how widespread? I mean, I know that they've, okay, we told you it existed. No, I'm not going to tell you anything else about it, which just seems like temptation to me for a lot of people. But yeah, did you get any sense of how many active planes this might impact versus not? Because I think you're right. I cut you off, but you were saying, look, if it was built later in the 80s, it was built in the 90s. I used to once upon a time bartend at an airport or like an airport hotel type of thing. So I talked to the pilots all the time, and they would regale me with stories of almost failures, but then say, look, our systems are triplicate. We don't have any of these problems. And I could see why their jaws would hit the table. So what are your thoughts on this, Jason? Like, is this hey, nice to know it could have existed back then? Or do you think maybe we need to pay more attention? What do you think?
So, yeah, great question. So, no, one, I did not get an idea from any of the information I could find as to how many planes this could affect, right, that are still in use. This plane that the DHS uses is a plane that they use, just not for, airline passengers, for DHS staff.
The DHS Air.
But it was a plane that they owned and they were using, and so these planes are still out there. They have a long life on them, but at the same time, airlines are upgrading their fleet. They do spin these things off to other groups, and they get newer versions of the planes. 757s are on their way out. They've been discontinued for quite a while. They're still in use. I don't mind flying on these planes. Actually, I prefer 757 to say a 737. But
me too.
They're the systems do change and are upgraded over time. One of the statements is that, well, the newer planes, the 787, for example, was designed with security in mind. Well, that's a nice statement. It's a very blanket statement. What does that actually mean? How robust is the testing? If somebody parked a 787 outside on a tarmac somewhere for the DHS to test? I'm going to say the answer is probably no.
It's interesting you say that. I'll tell you what, though, and I have no knowledge of this. The security engineering team at Boeing is not insignificant. They're huge, and the 787s themselves are actually built here in South Carolina. I think what do they call it? Final assembly. And so we get to see them tested every now and then at Myrtle Beach, because as you can imagine, we don't land a lot of planes at Myrtle Beach, except for we get an air show every day. And I've watched it come in a couple times. I mean, I haven't been on a 787 yet, but I look forward to it. But I remember as they were building it and we were looking at the delays and everything, they actually did spend an inordinate amount of time. And I feel like they got a year or two later than they wanted to market, precisely because they were looking at these things. So I think it's an interesting point. And in fact, now I'd actually like to go back. They did this test with DHS in 2016. I'd be willing to bet the Dreamliner is probably a different beast. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't have things to do, but I mean, you raise a good point. I don't see airport testing say, now fly one to DHS and let them take a couple days to see what they can do to it. You're right. That doesn't happen.
And if they do find a problem, I mean, can you imagine the upgrade process and how much that's going to cost? Sure, we can do it with a software update to say something like a 787. Easier than we could in 1983 757, but we have to certify this thing out its ears. It's going to be very expensive. This isn't a trivial, patch it and do a test flight to see how it worked. The thought that I had out of this, though, as I read through this, there are very, very few of us probably listening who work doing aviation security like this, where you're testing an airplane or whatnot, and aren't going to have much impact on that. However, if you start looking at the systems that are being deployed out there in cars, IoT devices, who knows what else is being thought up and tossed out there, the Amazon Key thing, which I guess is IoT, but whatever. We're building these really complex systems. They're interacting, particularly with the automobiles, with real-world type of stuff. We've got cars now that are reacting to the environment around them. They're not self-driving cars like, let's say, the Teslas, but they will slow down and brake for you if they detect something happening. We're getting complex systems, and complex systems have vulnerabilities. They use a lot of software. This is where I think those of us who are working in the industry can actually have some impact. We can start to look at the number of stories, and this is just another one, but number of stories that are now coming out in public, and use that as a way of influencing our organizations and saying, hey, guys, look, here's some of the stuff we're doing. Here's some relevant articles that, it's not exactly the same thing, but there are similarities between what they were doing and what we are doing, and how this was impacted. Try and move that security into the design phase. I mean, too often, at least in my experience, particularly in my employment background, coming from a web environment, security was very much after the fact, bolted on later. Now, with the complicated software getting pushed out to systems that are moving around the world and carrying people and stuff like that, we need to have that design moved out, the security design moved earlier into the process, and we can be influencers. You don't even have to work in security and have that in your job title to be an influencer. You can ask questions, raise points. Back to your comment earlier about people who are in IT have interest in security.
Yep.
Absolutely. This is, if you're in IT but not got security in your title, this is a fabulous, a point of where you can influence your organization and maybe ask some questions, point out some things that people just didn't think of, and hopefully help divert some unusual things like the undesired effects, like your car getting taken over via remote control, or your airplane.
Or your plane, if you happen to have an airplane. Yeah.
If you have an airplane,
I think it's a great point. If you happen to, that's a hell of a backyard. I think the rest of it too, and I really like your point on this, which is, don't look at this one example as anything other than, okay, what lessons can we learn, right? I think if you look at a lot of the industrial controls, same thing. It was built on a 20, 25-year recapture. So, okay, a lot of stuff is coming up. Now we got a chance to ask these questions differently. And I really like using this as an example, not to suddenly develop a fear of flying or anything else, but as a way to have constructive conversations and say, what do you think they would do now, knowing what we know today? If they could go back, why don't we do the same stuff there? So I think that's fantastic. Good stuff, my friend. It's always it's great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. It was good talking with you as well. Appreciate your comments throughout that, because that I think that helps.
I know
the
sometimes I was gonna say I should probably try to be quieter, and yeah, good luck with that. So we'll try. So that's been Hack Naked News. It's number 149. It's in the books, and we'll see you again in a week or two.